Welcome to the Drachneck and Friends official podcast, where we peel back the curtain on puzzle games and the people who make them. I'm Syrenne, the producer at Drachneck and Friends, and I'm joined as always by Alan Hazelden, the head Drachneck at Drachneck and Friends.
Hey,
Today, we're joined by Annika Maar, who you may know from her work on the Duck Detective games. How are you doing today?
Hello, very good, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us. Can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So I am the founder and creative director at Happy Broccoli Games. So I will do things like, the writing, I will do the art direction, some of the art in the game design I do together with Johnny, our programmer. And yeah, we've been going for 5 years now at Happy Broccoli Games.
That's awesome. So, for people who don't know what Duck Detective is, and first of all, shame on you. You heard me talk about it during our Thinky Game of the Year 2024 podcast. How could you have forgotten? But for anyone who's joining us now, how would you describe the game?
So, Duck Detective is kind of a more casual take on Obra Dinn and Case of the Golden Idol. So, opposed to those games where you are kind of playing a detective that doesn't have, a character themselves, in this one, you take on, the character of the Duck Detective. So, it's kind of more like an Agatha Christie type of mystery, where you have an Hercule Poirot that you follow around. And yeah, and you're just there going into this office that you get called into where there was this terrible crime of a lunch theft. And you're the one that has to figure out what's been going on so you can go in, interrogate people, analyze the crime scene. But the player is actually asked to understand the case and what's been going on and has to then fill out these sentences.
Awesome. So, obviously, you named Obra Dinn and Golden Idol. Were those direct inspirations for this, or were you toying around with ideas like this before one or both of those games?
So, I always loved detective fiction, right? I've been reading a lot of, like Agatha Christie or playing a lot of Sherlock Holmes games. So I kind of had the feeling I always wanted to make a detective game. But then playing Case of the Golden Idol was really, really inspiring because I feel like I haven't really seen a game before that has done it so well, where it makes you feel smart, where it makes you feel like you're actually the detective and you have to pay a lot of attention. There's no hand holding. You're kind of all on your own. And I love that feeling so much that I felt that, us as a team, we could make something that has our style, kind of, where it's, a bit more casual, a bit more wacky, a bit more character focused.
and how much of the game you ended up with did you have from the first moments of thinking about this idea, and how much came out through development?
So I would say, okay, because this game was developed in a very short amount of time, right? We made it in 6 months and then another 3 months of, marketing and porting. So we didn't really have much time to iterate. So kind of, the first ideas that we had kind of had to make it into the game. And I would say that we just had some things that got developed while we were working on the game or that got added on. So first off, obviously we wanted, the sentence filling in mechanic kind of similar to Case of the Golden Idol, but we wanted to, iterate a bit on that. And then the inspection mechanic that we have in the game, which originally was inspired by SpongeBob. You know how sometimes you have these really grotesque, ugly drawings of the characters when you see them detailed. And I just thought, oh, how fun would it be if we have these cutesy looking animal characters, but then you look at them and they're actually absolutely horrifying. And we started with that. But then while we were developing the game, I realized that, we needed to give more information to the player here and there. You also had to inspect the environment. And then, we had these design discussions of, okay, what do we do here? And we thought it would be really fun if you couldn't read it at first. What it said, it was just squiggly lines, and then you look over it and then you can actually read it. And for some reason, that just feels very fun. So that was something that came organically.
Awesome. Was the short length of the game always a goal? I mean, I'm assuming that the short development cycle was a goal, but was like the scope of the game, of the shipping game, basically what you had hoped it would be?
It turned out to be longer than what we expected. So actually, the goal was to make something around 40, 50 minutes long because, we knew we didn't have a lot of time. And so we thought that's what we could make in 6 months. But then, of course, when you start making things, it always kind of ends up more than you thought it would be. But I think it was a very good goal of us to set it very, very small, because then you're always going to end up with double of what you expected it to be. And so it still remains within what we were able to make in that time.
Oh, classic stories that warm my producer heart. I love the ambition of starting small and getting bigger. That just makes me so happy. Hey, Alan, you should take notes. Um, um, and did you know the tone of the game, like before you started getting into development? You were talking about, loving detective stories. Did you always know that it needed to be whimsical?
I mean, I would say it's kind of in the team's nature. I would say to, ultimately put in their humor. I would say even if we set out to make something very serious, I don't know, some kind of serious horror game, I think it would always slip in. So I knew, would kind of end up being that. But what I wanted to push for as well was this noir feeling. We wanted a bit more dark humor, just some jokes, that would go over kids' heads. It was very important for us to start out with not, making a kids game or something that people think it's a kids game, because I feel like that would kind of be the death of the game in terms of marketing, especially when the game, looks so cute. So I always wanted to try in terms of, the key art and what kind of marketing language we use, that people understand, okay, it looks cute, but adults will very much enjoy this game.
Did that present any difficulties in balancing some of the noir imagery and themes versus the cute, like not even necessarily during marketing, just literally during the development process?
Yeah, a bit. I mean, we had things like, obviously you have the stereotypical, alcoholic detective, and we didn't want to do that. But then it kind of came very naturally that, bread is bad for ducks. Okay, perfect. He's addicted to bread. And that kind of really made it easy for us. And I would say just, having a very depressing setting, like this sad, decrepit office with all these, kind of sad, overworked people in it who are just trying to make the best of life. That was very, very fun to do. And it's something that we enjoyed anyway. So in those terms, I think it, didn't feel, like we had to try very hard to make something different from what was natural to us. But I have to say that I'm terrible at writing these noir monologues. So that's definitely something I'm not good at. And so Johnny, our programmer, had to help me out there. Also, I mean, he's a native speaker, so I feel like it's maybe in that sense a bit easier for him. But I would say otherwise it worked out surprisingly well.
Yeah, so I guess you were writing the English as the reference text.
Yes. I was writing it first in English, and then we actually had someone else translating it into German. because I'm not a good translator at all, but obviously it helped that, the team knows German, so we could look over it and make sure the puzzles are translated correctly.
Yeah. When we spoke to the Golden Idol dev, they flagged localization as a big nightmare thing for this kind of game. Did you have any issues with localizing the game?
So we knew that it would be almost impossible to do a good localization unless, we had someone on the team to look over it, which is why we were strictly against localizing for release. Also because, we didn't have any time, we didn't really have any money for that. But also afterwards, we were very, very careful with it. So we have some fan translations that people could do on Steam. And some of them are quite good, but I would say in a lot of them, at least, when I spoke to people who speak those languages, that many of the puzzles, the fans just hadn't translated at all. They just left it as it was, and it wouldn't really make much sense because, it's difficult. And therefore, with the German translation, which was Marcel Weyers, who did it for us, we made sure to pick someone who has done, comedy, adventure translation before, so that, the humor gets translated correctly. And but then also with the puzzles, we had to look over it ourselves. And so I'm very nervous about trying to translate into a language that we don't know ourselves. Definitely.
Yeah, all of the games that I've localized that have genuine word-based puzzles that would need to get translated, like the only viable solution has felt like hiring a puzzle designer in that language.
Yeah.
Getting someone to effectively redesign the puzzles for that target language. And
absolutely,
that is,
yeah. Which apparently Cryptmaster did this, but they're like literally the only example I have in my head of people who've like decided they want to put themselves through that much extra work.
I mean,
it's crazy.
Escape Academy did.
Oh, okay, did not know that.
Because it's an escape room with a lot of word-based games, or word-based puzzles.
Yeah, I played it. I love that game.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that game is quite wonderful. But yes, that trust me, we very much had a like a Wild West draw about trying to lock down the languages, where they're like as few as possible, and I'm like as impactful as possible. And
what did you go with?
It ended up in, I believe, French, German, Spanish, in addition to English. So just those. We wanted to do Asian languages, but it just wasn't in budget at the time.
Yeah, it's such a shame that puzzle games are so incredibly difficult to translate. Oh well, but that's just the nature of it.
You either divorce the meaning of words from puzzle solutions, or you suffer. Those are basically the only two only two options.
Yeah.
So one thing that I really liked about playing Duck Detective 1, but Duck Detective specifically, was that by taking some of the the sentence filling mechanics from Golden Idol, it actually put me in like a headspace where it was not like a stressful or like demanding experience because of the vibes, because of the story, because of the stakes, and yet I still found myself, thinking through a lot of the stuff and doing actual puzzle solving. And I was wondering if that specific contrast is something that you were looking for.
Absolutely. Yeah, the idea was that people who might look at Case of the Golden Idol and would think, oh, that's too much for me, right? That looks stressful, that looks difficult. But I think if they would try it, they would actually enjoy it very much. And so it was kind of the idea that, oh, people would, might start with Duck Detective because it looks less intimidating, it's more inviting. It's, you're there just for the world. Um, and then you find out, oh, I actually really enjoy, deducing these stories, filling this in. And then you find out, oh, it's a whole genre. There are all these other amazing detective games, and it kind of opens up this world to them. At least that's what I hope, what Duck Detective would do to some of the casual players.
I hope so too. I feel like every episode our listeners are hearing us talking about the difficulty of getting people to move from one game in a thinky genre to another.
Do you feel like you have managed to tap into that, like that web of games? Like, oh, like if you like Duck Detective, like people are actually going to other games, or if you liked Oberdin, people are actually finding Duck Detective. Do you think that's actually happening or to what degree do you think that's happening?
I'm not sure, but at least we've had some reviews that said that, oh, they thought they wouldn't usually enjoy these detective games, but they enjoyed Duck Detective very much. I mean, they haven't said, oh, and now I'm going to go out and play all these other games. But I'm hoping that's what happened to these specific people.
Yeah, I honestly, I hope so too. I also, know that the game is in multiple bundles with other different detective games on Steam.
Mm-hmm.
And hopefully that also gives people multiple tastes of what this kind of experience can offer. Um, we don't have to get into it if you don't want, but I'm curious because your previous game, Kraken Academy, had a publisher. Was it intentional to not go with the publisher this time?
Yes. Well, yes and no. So, I mean, for our first game, Kraken Academy, because I felt like we didn't really know what we were doing. It was a bit scary, having your first game, and I didn't want us to do it alone. I thought it would be good to have someone there who helps us, with the marketing and the platforms and all these things. And I think it was very, very helpful. But then after that, we kind of had this desire of just wanting to take more control and learning those things ourselves. And then after Kraken Academy, we felt ready to do so. Obviously, you don't always have the choice. Many times you're with a publisher, well, because you need the funding. But with Duck Detective, because it was such a short turnaround time, we simply didn't have time to pitch the game. So basically, when we had a prototype, if you will, well, the game was already halfway done, right? And so then what's the point? By the time that we sign, then the game would already be completely done. So there wasn't really a point to that. So it forced us to self-publish. But I'm very, very happy that we did. And I mean, we did work with a marketing agency. We're working with Future Friends, who are absolutely lovely and amazing. And I feel like that kind of partnership where we feel in control, but we have people that we can rely on if we want to, but we don't feel trapped. Let's say, or we feel like, I don't know, we can't do things the way we want them to do. We don't feel that when we work just with an agency.
Totally get that. And we have a lot of experience with Future Friends specifically, and so co-sign that they're lovely, lovely people for anyone listening. How important was porting the game to different platforms for you?
So I would say that, I mean, Duck Detective did do the best on Steam. So, I mean, revenue wise, it wasn't crazy, on Switch and Xbox. Um, However, I think it's still nice just to reach, you know, a different type of audience who will not, play on PC. They just have a Switch, or maybe, it is a younger audience as well, or I don't know, families that play together. So in that sense, I think it's nice. Financially, yeah, I mean, not super great, but I think, I mean, obviously we still made the money back from putting the effort of porting it. And so that's what we'll do in the future.
And it's also like just very impressive that you were able to include porting the game on your very short timeline, because the console versions were released at the same time as the PC version, right?
Yes, I mean, our poor programmer, right? I feel, yeah, I feel for him, and especially because Xbox was very short notice. Because we managed to get into their what do they call it, ID Xbox program, where they help you with porting funding.
Yep.
Exactly, and then I think we had a month or something
Oh
ridiculous
my
to port it.
Oh,
goodness.
Jesus.
To port and
Yeah.
release?
Yes, yes, it was
Oh
intense.
my gosh. Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that's
I
and we managed to do it.
hope they
Yeah.
gave you more money than I think they gave you for that.
No, it was worth it. It was worth it. Yeah, and we had another contractor on, Dan Collier, who helped us out and who definitely did a lot of work over the weekend there just so we could get it done. So, yeah, shout out to him. That was great.
wow. Oh.
Yeah, I am so sorry. It's
I'm as someone who has shipped on consoles probably 70 to 80 times, that sounds like a uniquely terrifying experience to do
was.
Xbox on that turnaround. So congratulations.
Thanks.
And you did mobile versions too more recently, right? How did they go?
Exactly. Yeah. So it's going to be released on mobile on April 9th. And well, oh God, it was very difficult, I have to say, with the UI and just the tutorialization, because obviously that's a whole different market and a tiny screen, right? It's much different from porting something to Xbox and Switch, where we can basically just leave it the same. So there we had to make a lot more changes of, zooming the camera in more. And then, these icons, they have to be much, much bigger. We had to change the UI of how you put in the names. We had this small box, the small scrollable box where you select the names. And then we were like, it would be much nicer just to have a big box where you see all of the words at once. And that was actually just a much better design. So we ended up also putting that version into the PC and console builds. So, that was a great learning experience there. Performance wise, I mean, thankfully, the game isn't that crazy artistically or systems wise. However, when we were making the game, we didn't have that in mind. And so it didn't run on mobile at first very well. And so we ended up just turning off the light sources and then kind of calling it a day. We're like, well, it looks fine, at least if, the experience, the detective experience is the same. I will take that. And then, obviously just having some things of, adding the tappy finger of, click here, do this thing. What we definitely didn't want to do was to make it easier on mobile, which was something that our publisher pushed for, which we had to stand our ground on. Because, I just believe that, people who play mobile games, I don't think they're stupid. I don't think, that you need to dumb it down for them. I think that they will have an enjoyable experience, just having it the same as on PC. And we do have an easy mode, right? So if they want to play that, they can choose that on mobile if they want to.
And this might not be as interesting for the people who are listening to this, because I believe the mobile version will be out by the time this episode is, but we're recording it before it is. It looks like you're going with a free to start, like an unlock full game. Was
Yes.
that a publisher recommendation, or is that something you felt like you wanted to push for?
It was a publisher recommendation, but it made sense for us because, I mean, what it is essentially is just you play the demo, And then you're asked if you want to play more and if you want to pay for it, which is, you know, similar to what we do on PC anyway, right? Where we let people play the demo. I mean, we're not going to have it up for release, but I feel like it's a similar enough thing that, you know, it makes sense to me that it would work. I mean, obviously, I don't have experience in the mobile market, but it felt right to me.
Yeah. And what's the pricing gonna land at on mobile? Is it gonna be the same as the PC version price, or is it gonna be lower?
It will be a bit cheaper. I'm not sure the exact amount. I'm not going to say a number, but it will be cheaper.
No, you're good.
You mentioned the easy mode. I don't know if I realized that the PC version had an easy mode. I'd love to hear what the mechanical effect of that easy mode is and how you feel about it.
Mm-hmm. So basically, when you fill out these sentences, you fill out these deductions in the normal mode, it will tell you when when 3 or more are wrong, when 3 are wrong, and then when it's 2 or fewer. And by that sense, it makes it harder to brute force, right? And it also, like, it doesn't show you which words exactly are wrong. And if you switch to easy mode, it will highlight the words that are correct and that are wrong. So that, yeah, it makes it easier for you to then guess, you know, what it could be, because I see it a lot when people get confused over the things that they have correct, right? Then people start second guessing themselves. So, and I actually think it's quite satisfying, you know, to see the words surrounded by green or red. And so, in a weird way, I feel like it's quite a fun way to play the game. But yeah, for people who feel very strongly about not wanting to be, of not, you know, accidentally brute forcing the game and ruining the fun for themselves, you know, they can just play the normal version. Oh, and also when you do like puzzles, right? When you put in like in the combination log, for example, there it will also show you which numbers are correct and which ones aren't.
Got it. Makes sense. Do you have a sense of, like, did most players successfully gravitate towards the mode that was a better fit for them? Like, do you have a sense of how many people use the easy mode?
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't have the statistics for that, but just based on watching streamers and reading the reviews, I think most people pick the standard mode. And I think that's because, well, one, we wrote down recommended, and then also we called it detective mode and story mode. And obviously it's people are like, well, I'm a detective, obviously I'm going to pick the detective mode. And then some people were still frustrated, and clearly they would have enjoyed the game more if they had picked easy mode. And so we want to make some changes there as well, where we take the words recommended away. We're not calling it detective mode anymore. I think we're calling it sleuth mode now. And then maybe people who would enjoy, the story mode more will be more tempted to pick it, but we'll see.
Makes sense. What's the development timeline for the sequel? Is it also like about 6 months plus 3 months marketing, or are you spending longer on it this time?
We're spending longer on it this time, yes. So we started I think around May. So I think this time we're going to spend around 10 months on it, actually. And then another couple months for reporting and so on. I think it mainly has to do with still having to deal with the first Duck Detective while making the second Duck Detective. Because we didn't have a publisher, so obviously we have to do everything ourselves. While it's nice, you're in charge, but also it's a lot of work. And so it was just admin and just dealing with marketing things here and there that significantly slowed down the development of the second game, unfortunately.
10 months is still pretty good going.
That is still a very fast turnaround. What was the development timeline on Kraken Academy?
That was longer. That was about 1.5 years. So yeah, that was definitely way longer. But yeah, that game has a playtime of about 5 hours.
Yeah. How do you play test a game like this where it feels like you wouldn't be able to reuse playtesters?
Well, you can't. You really can't. So
Also,
everyone is really
6
valuable.
months, like in a development time that short, there's not a good time to slot playtesting in.
It's very difficult. Yeah, you basically just have to pull your friends out. You have to be like, you're sitting down now and you're playing this game, and then yeah, you take notes, and the game will be half broken, and you'll have to tell them, oh, excuse me, let me just get into the editor, fix this for you, and then they continue playing. So it's not something you can just send the key to someone and then have to play. You have to sit next to them just in case, because the game is actually not ready for play testing in that state. But you desperately need the feedback before it's too late.
Was there something specific that you got out of play testing? And I don't just mean like obviously the experience of watching people, but like, was there a mechanic or feature or UI element or something that was not in the original plans, but it became very clear that you needed?
I'm trying to think.
Or was it more like, oh, this character trait is not obvious enough, or like, oh, this motivation, people are not picking up on it? With a lot of like story specific stuff you had to tweak from playtesting?
Yeah, definitely a lot of story stuff. I would say, weirdly enough, that the UI worked pretty well. But oh yeah, I would say, I mean, okay, one thing that didn't work well in the UI was that people kept forgetting to put in people's names before they can put them into these deductions. So we ended up just putting wiggling exclamation marks in there, which isn't great design. In the second game now, we ended up doing it so if that you can put in a name and you haven't yet, when you open the book, it just opens it on that page right away. I think that works much, much better. In terms of things about the story, I would say we were definitely way too worried about people figuring out things too soon. So we were always way too vague with things, which then also doesn't make it exciting for the player, because if they have no elements that they can wonder about, or characters that they could accuse of something, then it doesn't make for a very interesting story. And so that definitely changed our minds a lot in terms of what we give out to the player. So we became much more generous, giving people information and about just evidence or relationships between characters. And then even if there was someone who could guess early on, who the perpetrator was or what was going on, it still felt satisfying to them in the end. Like they didn't feel cheated or that it was cheap. And so, I felt more calm than in that regards. I was always way too anxious about that.
I think something that a lot of people making games in this genre have mentioned is that the difficulty of a puzzle ends up being a lot harder, and like they'll end up designing like the first puzzle they design, they end up needing like, oh, I need a tutorial puzzle before that, and then a tutorial puzzle before that. What was the first puzzle that you designed for the game?
So the very first puzzle was the reception. So the one about Sophie's birthday. And we realized that it was a bit much to ask of the player to put in the name, do an inspection, and then fill them out in a sentence all at once. And for that reason, we then added in the apartment of the duck where you started in. That was supposed to be just a cutscene that plays out. But we thought that actually it would make for a perfect tutorial where you have no names, you have no inspections. It's a very chill way to just show you this deduction mechanic.
Yeah, it works really well for that context.
Do you have any questions for us?
Yeah, so I would love to ask both of you what your most and least favorite tasks are when you're making games or just working on games.
Ooh, Alan, we're going to you first. Put you in the hot seat.
I mean, I really like designing puzzles. That's probably my sweet spot, and then like playtesting the game and like just watching people like watching somebody play the game will give me like
Mm.
5 times as many ideas for new puzzles, and so it's just like very very creatively rewarding for me to watch people play. So yeah, like those two things is probably my favorite part of the
Mm.
game. Least favorite, I mean, it's a slog. It's not any particular task in the slog. It's just like that period where the game, like you've been working on it long enough that it's not exciting, but the finish line is still far enough away that it's not imminent. Like everything in that zone is just like no good.
Definitely, yeah.
I mean, also for Alan, his least favorite, sending emails.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. For me, it's tough because so from the producer's perspective, honestly, my two favorite things are one, when you're gearing up to announce the game and you know that you're excited about it, and you're just very excited to see other people's reactions to it.
But
That
that's
is,
terrifying. That's surprising to me that you enjoy that.
I mean, I think that it's not on every game. There are certain games that I've had the privilege of working on that I have known from very early on that this is something very special, and that
Mhm.
uh, this will be received very well by the people who see it, and the hope is just enough people see it. But like
Mhm.
feeling very confident in what it is, and that's something that I think that I have the privilege of as a producer of being close enough to the project that I'm seeing it every day, but not so close to the project that I am whenever I see it, I only see the flaws.
Mhm.
I think that I am at like the perfect distance for that to not be as terrifying. Um and then in terms of oh, the other favorite is when people on the dev team get really really creatively inspired by something. That
Mhm.
usually is just like one, it's contagious. So like when Alan comes back from a playtest and has these ideas, it's very good. Sometimes
Oh.
that happens like 3 months before the end of development, and I want to scream because
Hey.
I'm like, Alan, this is not the time to be getting creative inspired. This is the time.
3 months is nothing. 1 month
This
is
is
when you can be annoyed.
this is the time where we need to lock in and ship the game. We need to get it across the finish line. Oh my gosh. But
I'm making level edits to Electrifying Instant based on Nextfest playthroughs.
of course you are. You didn't need to tell me that. You could have just lied about that.
I could, but I just wanted to let you know. I thought it was important to be honest in this moment.
Yeah, definitely not trying to get another reaction clip from me. Didn't work this time, Buster. And then the in terms of least favorite, I think it's when I end up being the bearer of bad news regarding things like that's out of scope now, or we
Mm.
have to shelve it maybe for DLC. But like a big part of my responsibility is in being mindful of at all points what is the current work back look like. I just have that all in my head, and so when I hear like I joke a lot on this podcast about Alan and his scope creep habits or whatever, but like when I hear something and I legitimately think, oh, that would benefit the game, also I need to tell you that it's basically you get option A or B, and A is ship on time and B is on time and on budget, and then B is we make the game better. That's never something I like to do, and it's not something I have to do in every project. I'm very grateful for all the projects that I don't, but like sometimes the producer is the villain.
It's so important, though. Someone has to do it. So
Yeah,
even
no,
if
but
it doesn't make you popular.
it doesn't make me popular. It doesn't make me happy, but I also know that the whole project, like it is at that point that the producer like shows up and puts in like showcases all of their work of like all of their complete understanding of the development timeline to just be able to go, actually no, we can't do that. If we do, you're either going to be crunching, you're going to be uh working weekends, you're going to be delaying, you're going to be overstressed, you're going to be whatever. So sometimes we just have to not do it. And then sometimes if you're Alan, you just go ahead and do it anyway and then don't tell anyone until it's done and they say, I did it anyway. And I'm like, Alan, what is the point of having a producer if you don't listen to her?
I listen. Your perspective is always greatly valued.
No, you
even
hear
when
me,
I
you
ignore
don't
it.
listen. You hear me. There's a very big difference there.
That's what the team did to me. I remember one day I was ill, and then I came back, and they put in this sandcastle that you can kick over as a duck, and they were like, "Yeah, now Annika's gone. Let's put it in." And I'm like, "What?" Like now now the sound designer has more work, and this and that. And like, oh god, well, now it's in. Now it's too late.
I've cut things that are already in the game before.
No, ooh, brutal.
And I'll do it again. I'm not at the end of my career. I know that that's going to happen again sometime. But sometimes it's also for the, it makes the game better. To take something out. So
yeah, like if the trade-off is sound effect for kicking over the sandcastle or sound effect for this important cutscene.
Yeah. Sometimes the trade-off is you're having fewer levels, but every level becomes more impactful because you're not repeating this mechanic that many times.
Yep.
Sometimes game design is removing content. It's not just changing content. Sometimes content shouldn't be there.
Absolutely. Oh, that's a really good point, because actually in Duck Detective, we were meant to have like side quests for the characters. Isn't that crazy? It was going to be some kind of like adventure puzzles, right? That, well, not really puzzles, but just quests, right? That you would do on the side. And we kept procrastinating and kind of pushing that until the end. And then we were like, okay, now it's time to make these. And I felt it would do the exact opposite, right? It would make the game worse, because it's like, that's the last thing I want to do, distract players from the case. They need to remember all these things. I don't want to send them on a wild goose chase. It's great for, I don't know, some RPG or whatever, where you want to mix things up. But when you have a puzzle game like that, you really don't want to do that.
Especially if it like is pulling vital information out of a player's potential short-term memory.
Yeah.
Like, no, I totally get that. I actually, when you mentioned that, I was like, ooh, yeah, I could see why. Like, it would be cute to like spend more time with the characters, but that might actually be frustrating from a game design perspective.
It would absolutely be. Yeah, and then you have so many people just coming back to the sentence fill out and just brute forcing everything because they forgot what was going on. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I really think that you made the right choice on that. So talk to me about Duck Detective 2.
Right. So yeah, we're working on Duck Detective, the Ghost of Glamping. And yeah, this time the Duck Detective and his assistant now Freddy, Freddos, and the Crocodile, they're going to go on holiday together where a ghost strikes and they have to figure out what's going on. And we're kind of in the process of wrapping things up. And I'm excited to see what people will think. I'm absolutely terrified that, people will say, oh, well, I like the first one better. So I hope, people enjoy this one just as much as the first one.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. Is there what would you say is the number one thing from learning after releasing the first game, or rather after being able to sit with the first game for a little bit, that is different in the sequel?
I would say one big thing we changed was the hint system. So it used to be that it's just a dialogue scene. So you have the duck, voicing out the hints, and then you can pick dialogue options to see what hint you want to receive. And that was very frustrating for players. It took forever just to read through a hint or have it read out to you. And we knew it was bad, but we just didn't have time to change it. Game had to ship. But then we thought, okay, now with the second one, we have the opportunity to make that better. And so now we have this kind of tiered system where it's just in the UI, no one reads it out to you, so it's quicker, and you can decide just how much in detail you want to go with the hints, so it doesn't spoil anything to you if you don't want that.
That sounds wonderful. Like I said, I'm very excited for this game. Again, just personally, big fan
Awesome.
of the last one. Very excited to get going on the sequel. You have not announced your release timing yet, so I will not ask you about that. But
Thanks.
this podcast will be coming out in mid-April, so I can't wait. I'm
awesome.
Yeah. Alan, do you have any last questions?
I mean, do you feel like you want to keep making duck detective games? Do you feel like you might want to do something different next? How are you feeling about this universe?
I mean, I love Duck Detective, don't get me wrong. It's a lot of fun, but also I think for now I'm good. And I feel like the team as well kind of had enough of Duck Detective. I mean, at least for now. The first one we made so quickly that we still had the energy and the inspiration, and we felt, let's make another one. This is so much fun. This was so smooth, weirdly, making the game. Let's do that again. But now at this point, we feel like we don't have any inspiration to make a third one right away. We don't want to disappoint fans. It's the most important thing for us that just each Duck Detective game that we make, is exciting and lives up, to the standards that we have set. And so the next game will be something else. I hope our fans will not be too disappointed, but I'm sure at some point they are going to get their third Duck Detective, but that's after we're refreshed, and we feel ready for it.
Amazing. It sounds like you already have some ideas for what the next game is going to be. We'll not ask you about that, but
kind of. Yeah, I mean, yeah, we have some ideas spinning around. We haven't really been set on anything, but we're going to have a prototyping phase, and we're just going to try a bunch of things because thankfully now we can take the time and we don't have to just decide on the first best thing.
Awesome. You said something that made me remember a question I wanted to ask, which was you described the first game's development as actually very smooth, which I think to ship something of that scope in 6 months, I think it kind of has to be smooth. I'm curious if the second game's development has also felt smooth.
Not as much, unfortunately. It definitely was fun still, but I feel like we ran into more problems. I feel like we kind of not forgot, but we didn't necessarily see what made the first one good and just easy to develop. Because for the second one, the setting that we picked, I feel, this like glamping site already just makes things so much more difficult because it's an exterior and and it just meant that we had to redesign a lot of the things that we had already set in the first game. It just came so natural that we had characters that would sit in front of their PCs and then they would move at some point, and then you can interact with the PC and this and that. And that's how you get some personal information. And now we're like, okay, I mean, there are no PCs at the glamping site, or it would be weird if we just randomly place, a laptop next to a tent, and all of these things. And yeah, the level design was a bit of a nightmare, I have to say. I think we fixed it now, but it's all these things that obviously the players won't see.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting the kind of non-obvious things that come up, especially when developing a sequel. It's like, oh yeah, well this is going to be easy, and then it's like all the things you just took for granted.
Absolutely, yeah, that's exactly how it felt.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a real pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It was a lot of fun. Yeah.
Where can people find you online?
So we're obviously on, the game's obviously on Steam, Switch, and Xbox. We have a TikTok. We're on Twitter. We have a Blue Sky. We have an Instagram. We're kind of everywhere.
Awesome. And is that all at Happy Broccoli Games?
Yes. So I think pretty much if you Google the platform and Happy Broccoli Games, you should find us.
That is awesome. Well, thank you very much again.
Thank you too.
Again, personal. Can't say it enough times. Can't wait for the sequel.
Awesome.
And thank you for listening to the Draknek and Friends official podcast. Our music is by Priscilla Snow, who you can find at ghoulnoise.bandcamp.com. Our podcast artwork is by Adam DeGrandis. Our podcast is edited by Melanie Zawodniak. Please rate and review us on your podcast service of choice, and be sure to tune in next episode for more interesting conversations.